We are hopeful, we are prayerful, we are Hokies. This is the Falcon and the Dove, ironically, episode 13. We are this week beginning with honoring our friends, our comrades, the parents, the educators, the professors, the grad students, the children, the brothers, the sisters, the cousins. We are Hokies and we are Virginia Tech. Ross Abdallah Abamendi.
Christopher James Bishop.
Brian Royal Bloom.
Ryan Christopher Clark.
Austin Michelle Cloud.
Jocelyn Coulter Nowak.
Kevin P. Granada.
Matthew Gregory Gwaltney.
Caitlin Miller Hammerin.
Jeremy Michael Herbstrip.
Rachel Elizabeth Hill.
Emily Jane Hilscher.
Jarrett Lee Lane.
Matthew Joseph Laporte.
Henry J. Lee.
Liviu Librescu.
G. V. Loganathan.
Parthani Mamora Halomoan Lumbatoruan.
Lauren Ashley McCain.
Daniel Patrick O'Neill.
Juan Ortiz.
Minau Hiralo Penchai.
Daniel Alejandro Perez.
Erin Nicole Pedersen.
Michael Stephen Poole Jr.
Julia Kathleen Pride.
Mary Karen Reel.
Rima Joseph Samaha.
Waleen Mohammed Shalom.
Leslie Geraldine Sherman.
Maxine Shelley Turner.
Nicole White.
We will miss them. They will always be in our hearts and in our memories. We will celebrate their lives by celebrating the people they were and the gifts that they would have bestowed upon us. Our world may never be able to recover from their loss, but we will triumph in spirit. Our prayers, our thoughts are with the family and friends of everyone affected by this tragedy at Virginia Tech. We are Hokies, and as Nikki Giovanni said, we will continue to invent the future. Through our blood and our tears, and through our sadness, we will prevail. I don't know how you talk about the future this week without talking about our past in this country. This week in April 13th through April 20th, has historically around the world been one of the bloodiest weeks on the calendar annually. I dread this week. Every single year I dread this week. Because I think, what will I hear? What disaster? What individual will become unwound and unbalanced during a week that chooses to honor things of the past that have been bloodied and beguiled? Ironically, Professor Librescu, who was a Holocaust survivor, helped to bar the doors and sacrificed himself to save his students on Holocaust Remembrance Day. He clearly died as he had lived. A man who had spent his life teaching others never to forget. There are freshmen and PhD students and sophomores and RAs and band members and dancers. And Dove and I discussed this week, how do we go on without the spirits of these individuals? And to quote Maxine Gray from Judging Amy, when her fiancé died, the real life George Siegel passed away, she said, rather
Richard Crenna.
Or Richard Crenna, excuse me. I mixed those two guys up, and both of them passed away very closely to each other, and both of them tremendously talented actors. She said, rather than go on without him, I will go on with him. And that's how I think that we should think of these individuals. We should go on with them. Never without them. They carry them always in our hearts, in our thoughts, in our conscience. When we think about doing a profound act of goodness to present to others, we should do so in remembrance of those who have passed away. There is truly nothing that we can say to console those who have lost. I will say that in empathy, back in 1999, a young man who was historically unbalanced went on a shooting spree and shot many people, and included in that group was my cousin. And it was a very difficult period personally, and one tries to make sense of the senseless. But I can say that prayer and forgiveness is a very big part of that. And I don't mean giving lip service to that. I mean literally going through the process of being mournful, being angry, being progressive, being problem-solving, being resigned, and being introspective before you reach a place of saying, okay, I can let this go and move forward. It is a process. It is a journey. It is not ever a destination. And if any of that can offer any consolation to those who are going through this process, to realize that it will change, how you feel about it will change, how you process it will change, but don't you lose your goodness, your preciousness to this episode, or that is negative and vile wins. Don't you become part of the negativity. Stay strong. That is the only advice I can offer forward.
Today is a National Day of Mourning. Today on Friday the 20th.
Tough week.
Mm-hmm.
On so many levels, in so many ways, it's a tough week.
And things didn't go very well overseas either.
No, it hasn't gone well overseas. It hasn't gone well. Just here in Allegheny County, we had half a dozen schools in lockdown yesterday. About 5 high schools and Carnegie Mellon University in lockdown
there was a
yesterday.
shooting in downtown Pittsburgh. And
just all sorts of things. I hear a good portion of Northern California had a challenge with a particular individual who has now turned himself in. This is just a week that has historically drawn unbalance. And all we can do is try to get at the front end of this, which is when you see someone who is clearly on the outside, who is suffering, who is ostracized consistently, who draws that ostracization inward. They don't outwardly express their anger or frustration, but pull it inward and say nothing. When you see children picking on other children, be an adult, be a grown-up, tell them this is inappropriate behavior, because you never know that what happens in that 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade doesn't later become the festering pool that eventually manifests a break for an individual to move to a place where they turn that anger and that frustration onto others who never posed it.
Right, these things usually start very small.
And very early.
Very small, very early, with being taunted and being ostracized, and all of that builds up.
And the one conversation we decided, there were so many factors that were discussed this week in the media, and Dove and I always try to come up with things that aren't necessarily discussed as widely, and try to give it a better spin, because we always want to be solution-centered. We don't just want to rag on a particular situation. And there's a lot of things we could talk about, but we're not. But one of the things we are going to talk about is the issue of, when you're a teenager and you turn 18 in this country, you're supposedly an adult, but yet and still, a lot of states you can't have a legal drink till you're 21. There are a lot of legal forms that until you're 21, you may or may not, depending on what state you're in, be able to fill out without your parents. And if you're a college student, you kind of think of as an extension of being away from the parents, but not necessarily full adulthood. It's like a limbo land. And in the case of this young man who sought to take a lot of his anger and his illness out on others who didn't deserve it, there was apparently a diagnosis and a judicial decision that this man was in fact a danger to himself. Mm-hmm. And yet, he was released apparently at one point on his own recognizance, or with the belief that after a few days in a facility, he was going to medicate himself appropriately, take follow-up steps, and that everything was going to be hunky-dory. Whether or not his family was informed of this diagnosis and judicial decision, we don't know. And the school may not have even known of the seriousness of his diagnosis. And this leads me to wonder if we do not need to come up with a uniformity, at least in the United States, of if you're 18 and you're out in the work world where you're paying your own bills and you've got your own health insurance and you're paying your own car insurance independently, then you are in fact an adult, an independent adult, and then you will be treated with all of the respect due an adult without exception. However, if you're a student and your parents are paying your college bills, at least to a certain extent, you're on a college campus where literally the administration is in fact in part responsible for you, where you're living in dorms that are overseen by a private or public institution, then there needs to be some sharing amongst the adult administrators of that institution in partnership with parents so that everybody's on the same page. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I do not think it's unreasonable for parents who are partly footing the bill for the student, unless they're completely emancipated, that is the case, to have access to a student's grades, have access to a student's medical records. I didn't say over them. I just simply said access to, in the instance where the individual's ability to either make independent cognizant decisions for themselves is compromised. If a student is in an accident and that student is unconscious, heaven forbid, then a parent may have to come in and sign paperwork for that student for them to get medical treatment because the student is no longer able to give permission. And if a student has a serious mental illness, is that not the same thing? And why can't administrators know the medical diagnoses as it pertains to lucidity and performance in conjunction with other students on campus? Why shouldn't administrators have access to that information? Because they are in fact responsible for the student who is away at school. And they should be able to gather that information so that they can make the best decision for support services for that student, and so others who are also responsible for that student, teachers, deans, provost, whoever, bursar, who has to handle the accounts, knows what this student's situation is. And it clearly, in this case, there were a lot of pieces in place where information was not shared. And I'm not sure that benefited anyone. And I know that different universities around the country and around the world have different policies on what information is made available to parents and what isn't, and what policy and procedure has to be followed in order for that information to be shared or accessed. And as a mom of a daughter about to go to college, I feel very, very strongly that there should be a partnership and cooperation of information shared that is pertinent to the safety and well-being of that student and, by extension, other students. Now, Dove, you are going to be the interesting voice of the student in this instance. We've heard what the media has to say. We've certainly heard from many, many parents in the media this week. And I'd like you, if you can, to give voice to how you feel about this scenario and how it played out.
I think that situations like these bring out some of the best in people, and sometimes the worst. But I definitely think that these instances bring communities together.
Yes, they do.
And it's very difficult to lose a classmate, much more for 32, to lose a teacher. But it's also very clarifying for people sometimes, because then you forget all the little stuff. You forget especially all the silly little stuff, little things that you disagree on a normal basis. You forget your disagreements with whoever you disagreed with, and you come together more, and you just love each other.
I think that's true.
And I think that's one of the good things that comes out of it.
Well, it certainly does point out how important it is to tell people that you love them and to share that love with people that you care about every day. It brings up how important it is to disregard kind of the silly, trivial stuff that divides people.
Mm-hmm.
And
because it's really not that important.
Exactly.
And being together, being a community, and being friends, and just focusing on what you do agree with, and liking each other for all the good things.
Exactly.
And don't worry about all that other stuff, because it doesn't really matter in the great scope of things.
Do you think that the Virginia Tech campus and its student body will be stronger? Like, I was thinking, what if I were an accepted student right now to Virginia Tech for next year? How would I feel? If I was a parent of a student who was going to attend next year, how would I feel about sending my child, anywhere actually, but to the campus? And everything I've heard, everybody has been pretty solid about how they feel. And it's a fine institution. I had the distinguished privilege of working with one of the faculty members many years ago when he was at Purdue, and speaking at the same conference, and just an immensely talented individual. And the campus is gorgeous. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, I don't think anything would really change. I think parents might be concerned about the lack of security cameras, but other than that, it's a great school.
Exactly. So if you were an accepted student there, you'd still be confident about attending there in the fall if that was where you were going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we know a lot of kids who've gone there over the years and who may still go there. And, that it's a fine institution. I think it's important. When I was in college, my freshman year in college, we lost 2 girls in a drowning accident.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is any safer anywhere else.
I don't either. I really don't.
I think everywhere is pretty much the same.
I mean, certainly there's some things that you can do to improve, and cameras is a big one. Cameras, take those cards, sign in, sign out, make sure that the halls are watched.
If they add those, then they're going to be fine. Yeah, they have the key card thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where you have to swipe your card and everything. If they install those extra cameras, then they should be fine. But I don't think anywhere is much safer. I mean, of course, there's those crime rate reports and stuff. In some places, some locations are technically safer than others. But in terms of when something like this, anytime a shooting could happen, or anytime a person could snap forever for whatever reason, then I think all schools are the same with that, because that could happen anywhere.
Oh, it really can. It really can. And my freshman year in college, there was 2 girls who died, and they drowned, and it was because we had a flood. We had a really bad storm, and there was a flood, and the street was no longer a street, it was a river, and there was a couple hundred students trying to build a chain to rescue these girls, and unfortunately they drowned. And I remember them, and I remember that day, and I remember what we did, just like it was yesterday. That doesn't fade, but I also remember that I wasn't intimidated about being in the area. I wasn't thinking, okay, we're going to have another flood again at any moment, or anything like that. I wasn't afraid to be on campus. I loved my campus, and I thought that it was beautiful, and that everything would be all right. And I think that it's the same thing here at Virginia Tech. You can't think, okay, well, there's something else like that could happen. It could happen anywhere. And what you hope is that those who can learn from this and increase security will do so, and you do what you can.
And a lot of schools are posting new security measures that they're doing on their websites. If you're in the middle of the college process right now, then you should check the websites of the schools that you're considering again, because they may have added something or changed something. Some of them have left a message in regards to what the school is doing to protect the students, and advice to students, common sense advice for students to employ themselves. And some schools' websites are doing that. So you check those out.
Do you think that some people have said this, so I'm bringing it up merely as a conversation point? Do you think that it would have helped students or faculty for someone in the building to have been armed?
To have been armed? Is it someone in Norris Hall, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean,
people
have said, well, what if the college students had guns, which I think was kind of insane.
I think that would make it worse. That would just make it worse.
Yeah, because that just turns everything into Dodge City.
It may
but
have
faculty, maybe, or armed security based in the halls,
yeah,
maybe.
based in the halls. That some high schools have that.
Yeah.
Have armed security guards. Maybe not, but you can't really tell, really.
I can think of some professors I wouldn't want to have access to a gun either.
Yeah.
Given any particular day.
No,
maybe not.
I don't think faculty should have guns. I think they should just have trained security guards in the hallways. Trained security guards, and they can have guns. Do I think the teachers should have guns? No. No.
Yeah.
Maybe if they just had one on their desk or something, but not on their person, maybe that would be okay. But I kind of just think that the faculty shouldn't have guns, and that they should just have trained security guards who are responsible for just that.
Exactly, because, you think, hindsight being 2020, what if somebody was armed? But if they're armed, then, depending upon this guy, his training, his acumen, he could take the gun off of you. Now he's got more guns,
Yeah.
You'd have to have somebody who is very, very good with it, and that means a trained security force.
Right, that's what I mean. Trained.
Would be, okay.
Be ready for a situation like that, and not all teachers and faculty would be ready for something like that. Even trained adults in their field. They're not necessarily trained with how to handle a situation like that with a gun.
I know that, thinking back on most of the college professors I knew, I couldn't see them getting a gun out and responding in that kind of circumstance.
So, yeah.
Just couldn't.
Just the cameras and maybe a security guard. A couple security guards.
Yeah. And again, usually a walled-in campus. This campus is not a small campus, it's 26,000 students, is normally one of the safest places anywhere, unless there's a perpetrator. And then it can become quite a bit unsafer, because now that college law enforcement needs to get in touch with the greater law enforcement outside of the walls in order to get them to respond to a crisis. And that's the thing. I mean, that's what you have to analyze in the risk assessment.
A lot of the crimes that happen are by people who are already in the school.
Yes, sometimes that is the case. And in this case, he was already a student. And what do you do? Conversely, when you have like an urban campus that is not walled in, but is kind of integral to the area that they're in. For example, the University of Pittsburgh. I saw their security station, and I'll tell you what, that is seriously state of the art. They're in the Oakland area of Pittsburgh. There are 900 cameras. They have people watching all of them at all times. You're signing with code on your swipe card, and they know where that student is at any given time. There are computer monitors everywhere, backup systems, and it's incredibly impressive. And the thing is, if something does go wrong, heaven forbid, there are the Pittsburgh police, the Allegheny County police, Pennsylvania police, state police at disposal, not just university police, immediately. They don't have to be called in. They're right there.
Right. Is Virginia Tech walled in?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're even bigger than what is technically Blacksburg itself. I mean, it's a huge campus. And beautiful. It's a beautiful place. I've been there before, and it's just glorious. And, that's normally where you think, oh, yeah, college campus, typical college campus. But then you have to think about, like, the Pitts and, like, the Drexels and universities that are right in the middle of major urban areas. And, how do they, like, Drexel and Penn are right next to each other in Philadelphia. Penn is kind of walled in, we call that the Ivy Hogwarts. And then there's Drexel, which is kind of integrated into University City. So there are buildings that belong to the university interspersed with other buildings through the neighborhood. And, both Drexel and Penn have their own police. But, of course, you also know there's city police, county police, and state police right there. So, one of the things that you have to consider when you're talking about a campus that's kind of off and away is what's our emergency response in a worst-case scenario? How do we bring in larger groups of law enforcement? And moving on to the next crisis that just keeps continuing to fester and grow and change.
Our pet food follow-up story.
Pet
This
food
is
follow-up.
disturbing. This is a little disturbing. It's getting worse by the week.
And this is another one that, as the days went on this week, you just go, okay, this is just getting worse and worse and worse. For those of you who haven't heard, you should look at wheat gluten as contaminated. You should look at possibly corn gluten if you're outside the United States. I understand our brothers and sisters in South Africa are having big problems right now because of contaminated corn gluten, contaminated with melamine again. And now in the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, we should be looking at rice gluten.
And now they're saying that that this contamination might be intentional.
That's right. You heard right. Unfortunately, it could be intentional.
Someone asked about this when this whole thing started, but they kind of just brushed it off.
And
at the beginning.
Apparently, the melamine could have been used to attempt to make the protein factors look more significant.
To make the food look like it has more protein, and thus they could charge more for it.
Yeah. So basically, somebody decided that it would be okay to poison pets for profit.
Apparently.
That's really disgusting.
So that's their theory right now?
The FDA is waiting to get their visas to go to China to investigate these locales. Right. And, you know...
Stay tuned and we'll give you more on this story. But, yeah, they're going to check it out at China.
We have a new updated list of additional dog foods that have been added and one additional cat food. Please head to Mother Earth News, Martha Stewart's website, all those places that have make your own food, because it's getting to the point where any of these fillers may be in question. And, you know, as we suspected early on, we said this was going to expand and extend, and it is. And I just don't know where the end of this is. The other thing that we might have to be concerned with is that those companies who had supplied originally the farm gluten products, the wheat, the rice, the corn, we're not positive yet, but may have, once the recalls began, decided to reroute their contaminated, poison, tainted stuff to hogs. And apparently there are now hogs in California whose urine has tested positive for melamine. Now, the question is, who wants to eat pork with melamine? Raise their hands. I see no volunteers.
And this article from MSNBC says the Chinese authorities have told the FDA that the wheat gluten was an industrial product not meant for pet food. Still, melamine can skew test results to make a product appear more protein-rich than it really is.
Okay, what's an industrial product that's made out of a foodstuff that's not intended for consumption?
Well, I'm sure they have one.
I mean, what do you do?
I know we have a lot of Chinese listeners.
Yeah, I mean, what
China.
do you do with it if it's not meant to be eaten? Somebody tell me what you do with wheat gluten that's meant to be an industrial product and not consumed.
If you're from China or know what wheat gluten is used in industrial products, please email us and tell us what it is used for.
What in the world is that used? It's probably not used in China. It's used elsewhere.
Yeah, but please help us out. Anyone who knows the answer to this question, please help us out.
That one got me.
But this is getting ridiculous.
And it's just getting a little bit too weird. I don't think anybody wants melamine in their food.
And we don't know. And we don't know if this is spread to humans yet.
Human, cat, rat, dog, bird, chickadee. Nobody wants melamine in their food.
These are people's best friends here. And this is terrible, the figures that of all the pets that have been contaminated, infected, have suffered kidney failure, have passed away. This is terrible.
It's awful. We need to get a grip on it.
This is an epidemic now.
And I would say, make your own food.
Yeah, make your own pet food.
It really isn't that hard.
Best to be safe than sorry. This is getting worse every week, so, protect your pets.
Protect your pets.
Use common sense.
Protect yourself. watch what you buy, read the labels. It got gluten in it. Wheat corn.
If someone did intentionally put this in the food to just so that they can charge more for their food, well, I guess they're gonna make lots of money now.
Not. Well, if it's found to be intentional, this should go way beyond fines. There's a criminal intent and gross negligence, and there should be some jail time wrapped up in that, because the bottom line is that you don't know the food stuff that's going to pass to animals won't end up in food for people.
Yeah, I just
now
have to,
it's not supposed to under USDA guidelines. There has to be a process by which something is eventually approved for human consumption. But my point is there should be criminal charges put in place and jail time in our jails.
Yeah, not just a slap on the wrist. If this is intentional, I hope they find who's responsible for this. If a bunch of people are responsible for this, and they just don't get a slap on the wrist.
Because if you want to do business with somebody else, it has to be done in a fair practice. You know what's legal in that country. You do business with an open hand.
Yeah, you wonder how melamine could have gotten in there accidentally.
Well,
it's plastic.
Queried that before. We're like, huh? How do you accidentally
get plastic in pet food?
It just,
So we're gonna keep updating with that, because we haven't been hearing a lot of news stations talk about that, really.
Okay, we had to talk about something good this week, because if we don't talk about something good, we'll cry.
Yeah.
So excuse me. On the upside of this week, a very, very dear author to my heart has, beyond the grave, and with the help of his son, released a new book, which toppled, temporarily I'm sure, but toppled anyway, out of the first place, our dear friend Harry Potter Book 7.
Let's see who it is first.
Toppled!
J.R.R. Tolkien's latest book might be his last book. The Children of Hurrying came out on April 17th. And is now #1 at Amazon.com, taking Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows to #2 after being at #1 for 16 weeks. Only one author can do that.
Falcon is smiling.
Falcon is very much smiling.
John Ronald Rule Tolkien, I miss you. I really, he's just like everybody's grandpa.
I think I speak for the Harry Potter community. Nobody is upset about this.
No.
Because this is Tolkien, and yes. Tolkien is our buddy. He's the master.
And our buddy Alan Lee did the illustrations for the book, and I'm so happy about that.
It's a beautiful book. We've got it right here.
It's a beautiful book. And
she's reading it.
If you get it here at Borders this week, it's 40% off this weekend. But I didn't say that out loud. But it is 40% off this
Evil
weekend
laugh.
at Borders. It's beautiful. It is an expansion of the story of Herne and his son, and the rest of his children, and the future generations from the Silmarillion. This is a really, really, really great thing. I never thought that we would get any more of these writings from Tolkien again, so I'm really delighted. I do understand that probably in the future there will be his translation of Beowulf published from some of his original writings. What really makes Children of Hurrying really good is that it's minus the editorialization. And there have been publications made in the past few years that had quite a bit of editorialization included. And Christopher Tolkien was very, very careful not to do that. So this is really the writing as Tolkien would have preferred his work, and without all the embellishments. And it's great. It's great. And it's in baby boomer friendly font so that our presbyopic eyes can read it easily.
The font is bigger, and just the fact that a book like this came out during one of the most difficult weeks of the year, arguably, and in 24 hours became #1 at Amazon, while knocking Harry Potter to #2, which is no small feat. And so that just shows how strong a fan base there is of J.R.R. Tolkien, and I'm sure he's smiling right now.
I'm sure he is.
He'd be 113 right now, wouldn't he?
Yes.
113 for episode 13.
Yes, he would. And I think that this is very nice for young people, younger adults, because I don't recommend most of Tolkien's writing to children, except for The Hobbit and,
some people find that hard to read.
Yeah, some people. The Hobbit. Let me tell you, as an adult, trying to get through the first 70 pages of The Hobbit is a challenge. But after you get past the first 70 pages, you're good to go.
Right. I've talked to people who have who've been around my age, and I tell them The Hobbit's for children, and they're like, "What?" He thinks just like the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, The Lord of the Rings I really, truly don't recommend for anybody under age 10 to begin, because it is such a mentally, emotionally complicated tale. And it has nothing to do with your brilliant mental acumen as an academian young students, because I know for all those kids who get through those very, very large books these days for children, and I love to see it. Mm-hmm. I love to see kids reading, but I do tend to think of Tolkien stuff, and The Lord of the Rings in particular, the Silmarillion in particular, and Children of Hering being a portion of the Silmarillion, to be adult material.
Right, and probably by book 7, J.K. Rowling's books may not be appropriate for children.
Yeah, it's, every year, kind of like, that group is just growing up with them.
When Phoenix came, people were saying nobody under 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody under 10.
And go, okay, that started off with children's whimsy, but, then eventually they're just all growing up.
And, so book 7, people were joking, saying that by the time the movie adaptation comes out, it'll be rated X.
Yeah. With NR on it.
Like, we're not even going to try to rate this. NR.
Some little 8-year-old will be standing there with his dolly with the books on it, because you need a dolly because they weigh like 40 pounds. And, looking up at the rating going, Mom?
And people are saying like, oh, it'll never go to R because Lord of the Rings never went to R, which was incredible.
But should have. Let's be frank.
Lord of the Rings, all 3 were PG-13, and
with a lot of editing.
They drugged the MPAA.
I mean, Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, Fellowship of the Ring I could certainly see as a PG-13, but The Two Towers, had it been done the way the book was written, would have been an R before you could blink.
Had Goblet of Fire been done like it was in the book, it may have been kissing the R line.
That's true. That's actually
completely honest.
That's actually true. I mean,
a lot of people are saying, "Oh my gosh, it was so dark," and all the fans are like,
"Could have been darker."
You have no idea.
Yeah. Could have been darker.
You have no idea.
I certainly think, and Return of the King should have definitely been an R. How they got that on the PG-13.
That is the line. That if you want to know where the line between PG and 13 is, it's Return of the King.
Oh, they're all over it. They're stomping the line because it's definitely adult material, and it is interesting that there is more and more adult fantasy material that is quality material. I'm not talking about material that's, simply light, fare with just a lot of violence, but actually
it actually has some weight behind it.
When I say adult, I don't mean adult themed or sexual content necessarily. I mean adult in terms of the maturity necessary to process some of the emotional scenarios.
Right, a child might be able to to read it and get through the story, but they may not necessarily process the other stuff that adults may recognize.
Now, let's say you're in 8th grade right now, 7th, 8th grade, and you want to read Children of Herring. I don't think that's a problem. I think that what I've read so far, the way the book is written, the way it's approached, you're probably fine. However, you're probably not going to attempt the Silmarillion for another year or two, or maybe college, because it is very complicated.
It's very hard to pronounce words.
Well,
right.
yeah. First of all,
there's so many names, and
nailing down that key to the pronunciation at the beginning is really...
And usually when I don't do this, but a lot of children and teens, if they see a word that they can't pronounce, they usually just skip it and they don't even try to pronounce it in their head. I mean, they kind of do that with the Silmarillion. They'd be doing that throughout the whole book.
Yeah,
and that's not good. So you should really try to know how to pronounce it in your head if you're seriously going to read it. So what's the Children of Herring about? It's
specifically about Herring and his family and what happens moving forward. It is a section out of the Silmarillion.
Okay.
And it is very approachable.
But the section isn't actually in the Silmarillion that's published.
It's a sort of. It's sort of
it's touched upon.
This is an expansion of detail of a section that's already in there. You know, the War of the Ring, which is the Lord of the Rings, is in the Silmarillion. If you read the Silmarillion first, you actually know the end of the Lord of the Rings without reading it, which I would not recommend, even though it was written to be the first book.
To be the first book.
Yes,
exactly.
It's actually written to be the first, the creation stories of Middle-earth.
The Silmarillion's kind of an umbrella book for the whole tale. The whole tale of Middle-earth.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'd recommend The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, and then the Children of Herring.
Yeah, unless if you're a teen and you're looking for something to read for the summer reading, to keep your mind sharp, and I recommend keeping your mind sharp.
Keep your mind sharp.
And you've looked at the Silmarillion and you've gone, there is, you open the first chapter and go the Ainulindale and go, I can't say it. I'm not reading it. I understand your hesitation. I was a senior in high school when the Seal came out, and I just gobbled it up because I just wanted something else of Tolkien. But I got to tell you, getting through the first few pages
the first two chapters are very very information and name heavy. It's kind of like reading the Bible almost.
Yeah, you got to make a chart. You're like reading the good book. You got to make a chart.
If you want to keep everybody straight, but once you get past those first two chapters, then it gets a little easier.
Then it flows better because you have the story of Baron and Luthien to Nuviel. And there's so much more. The Valaquenta.
I think that the Lord of the Rings prepares you for the Silmarillion. I don't think you should start with the Silmarillion because the Lord of the Rings kind of prepares your mind and how you read it. And the Lord of the Rings would provide a lot more actual background story for you, and then reading the Silmarillion, which just has a lot more background.
Right. Now,
you can do it in that order. You can read the Lord of the Rings before the Silmarillion, and you probably should.
Yes, you probably should. I would recommend it. And if you've read Christopher Paoli's Aragon, where he does a lot of Tolkien philology,
in there.
Yes, and language, and some people may say, why is this important at all? Well, I'll tell you, there's actually a reason. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien was a philologist. He studied languages, and he studied the origins of language, and contrary to popular belief, he studied all languages from all over the world.
He's from Africa.
And he was born in Africa, and a lot of people don't know that. And he really embraced diversity quite a bit, contrary, once again, to a lot of xenophobic propaganda, which is completely untrue. He was tremendously tolerant and found fascination and beauty in most of the languages of the world. And he saw a distinct trend of language extinction, much the same way that we see extinction in nature. And he thought that was very sad. And he actually chose to preserve, which is why I don't really ever say Tolkien created languages. I say he adapted them into his own, preserving some of the most sacred prefixes and suffixes along the way of languages of the world.
From real languages.
From real languages. And it was not coincidence. There are words in Tolkien's usage in Sindarin and Talahin and Drovish, and Kanya, where he has preserved prefixes and suffixes that were from two different languages, but they mean exactly the same thing. That is not accident. That is genius.
Tolkien was a genius.
And he did that because he thought those languages and those words and those meanings would slip away. And actually, ironically, one of his favorite words, someone asked him once what his favorite word was in all of the books, the favorite name. Mm-hmm. And it was a name that was consistently mispronounced in the Peter Jackson films, Faramir. And Faramir is from Croatian and Czech, and it means beautiful world, beautiful earth. And he said that was his favorite name. And I thought, that's so cool.
The movie Faramir doesn't seem to suit that name at all.
Oh, that's Jar-Jar-Omir. That's not Faramir. That's his evil doppelganger brother.
Me.
The jackbooted thug. Yes, that's Jar-Jar-Omir.
The ring will go to Gondor.
It's like, who is this guy? You know, and I love David Wenham. I love the actor.
You love David Wenham.
Woo.
Yes. Nothing against David Wenham.
Not at all. He's quite lovely, talented, gifted actor. He's a hunk. But anyway, but the characterization was like way off. So, you know, it's important to note. Why is this important? Because this is a celebration of the languages of the earth and the peoples of the earth in many, many forms and traditions.
These are our languages.
And so they are sacred to us. And unfortunately, and in some instances we've already reached this point, but unfortunately, in the not too distant future, the only way we may still remember these root names, these prefixes and suffixes and their meaning, will be because they are locked in our fantasy, because we have long lost the languages, because the languages are gone. That's really sad. But Tolkien foresaw this and decided to save them, he thought, at the time, for his own amusement, never realizing then that so many people would love his work. And I think that's why his work is so universally celebrated, is because, is it the best written literature? Of course not. But it is some of the most heartfelt literature. And it is truly, you sense with every word his sincere passion and love. And it's like for what he did.
It's like the languages that have been extinct are preserved in these books.
Exactly. Well, no longer will we ever lose Elbereth Githoniel. We will never lose Nianen. We will never lose those words from the past and from the archaic, because they are preserved. If all else fails, we still have books.
Yeah.
And people have books in many forms
and
now.
That reminds me, the American Library Association recently released their most challenged book list that they do annually. I think it was for 2006.
Yeah, they do it 2000.
Their book for 2006 now. I think, I gotta remember this. The Catcher in the Rye and two other books. I think one was. Wasn't the Chocolate War? The Chocolate War was number 10. Chocolate War
still on there,
was
but
number
it's 10. Yeah.
But The Catcher in the Rye and two others finally got knocked off the list.
Yeah. Finally, they stopped banning them or burning them or whatever they were doing.
They stopped challenging them.
And
challenging that they call it.
Once upon a time, The Lord of the Rings was on the list of challenge books. I think that was because there were individuals who just didn't get it at the time. But I think now, you know, they get it. And so if you're starting to build your summer reading list, this is a
Read banned books, yes.
Yes, really good place to start. This is National Library Week, isn't it? I think it is National Library Week.
Yay!
So, read.
Read The Children of Hurrying if you can. You know, if you haven't read The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings yet, read those first. They're wonderful. You will be hooked by the second chapter.
Yeah. Enough of the movie stuff. Come on and read the books. It's just so
You don't know
exciting.
what you're missing, you know?
It's so much fun. If you can't read it alone, get together with some friends. Go over to the bookstores. Go to your library. Read together. Okay, and one more note. I know that everybody's probably thinking I really can't take one more passing this week. And there were actually quite a few of stalwarts in Hollywood, etc. and so forth. But I have to bring this one up because I actually had the opportunity to meet this man when I was 13 years old in Hawaii. Singer Don Ho has passed away at age 76. And for those of you who may not know, Don Ho wrote Tiny Bubbles. And I actually know Tiny Bubbles in English and in Polynesian, in Hawaiian, because when I was there, you heard it all the time. You heard it wherever you were.
Tiny bubbles.
Tiny bubbles in the wine. And so there's an article here provided for us by
The Associated
Press
and MSN
and
News.
MSN News. Publicist Donna Young said the singer died Saturday morning of heart failure. He had suffered with heart problems for the past several years, had a pacemaker installed last fall. In 2005, he underwent an experimental stem cell procedure on his ailing heart in Thailand in 2005. Ho entertained Hollywood's biggest stars and thousands of tourists for 4 decades. For many, no trip to Hawaii was complete without seeing his Waikiki show, a mix of songs, jokes, double entendres, Hawaiian history, and audience participation. Shows usually started and ended with the same song, Tiny Bubbles, which Ho mostly hummed as the audience enthusiastically took over. I hate that song, he often joked to the crowd, adding that he saved it for the end because most people my age can't remember if we did it or not. Donald Tai Loiho, who is Hawaiian, Chinese, Portuguese, Dutch, and German, was born August 13th, 1930 in Honolulu and grew up in the rural countryside of Kaneohe. Now, Don Ho is a perfect American example of the melting pot and the multicultural mutts that we all are. So, I had to celebrate Don because I'm a multicultural mutt too. And I'm a proud multicultural mutt. Raise your hand, multicultural mutts, because we are cool.
We are cool.
So, Don, wherever you are, you probably have a ukulele in your hand, or a Mai Tai, or both. And hopefully you are singing songs of celebration to those others who have crossed over, and that you're all having a really good time. That's what I hope. And probably my grandmother, who was well over 100, who died last year, has probably snagged Don Ho somewhere along this spiritual line and has probably gotten him to sing her a song or two. So for Grandma and Don and all of the rest of our friends who've made that journey home, that final journey home, we hope that you find peace.
Thank you. And now it's time we wrap up for the quote of the week. A person's true wealth is the good he or she does in the world. Muhammad.
Good quote.
As always,
you
can email us with your feedback, your questions, your suggestions, your comments, any topic or story that you would like us to discuss. Anytime, send us your feedback to Falcon Dove, FalconDove @arayasimmons.com. AREYASIMMONS.com. Falcon Dove @arayasimmons.com. Or Araya @arayasimmons.com. It goes to the same place. That we've been getting wonderful poetry. We've been getting some quotes. If you want us to use those quotes for the quote of the week, then we will. Let us know in the letter.
We will.
They are wonderful. Thank you for sending us all that good stuff. We've been getting some wonderful stuff. Keep sending us your feedback. We want to make this show as interactive as possible, and we want to know what stories that you want to hear about and what topics you want to hear discussed. So send us your stuff, and it'll improve the show.
Yeah, we definitely have some really crazy stuff coming up in the coming weeks. We've been alluding to a big announcement about the Carnegie Science Center, and we're just about ready to present that in the upcoming weeks with an interview with some people from the Science Center. Some big exhibitions coming up and some big opportunities. We're going to be talking to some homeschool people. For those of you who didn't know, I've homeschooled Araya, the dove, and we feel that homeschool is a very important option for people to have if they want it. And we're going to be talking intermittently about homeschool stuff in the next few weeks. Of course, this is crunch time for those making decisions on universities. So we're going to talk about financial aid. We're going to talk about scholarships. It's not too late, gang.
Yep,
it's not too late.
We're going to be having a lot more people interviewed on this show.
Yep.
We're getting a couple interviews are coming up soon. So stay tuned for that.
And lots of, getting ready for the summer. We're even going to have some recipes starting to show up on the website because it's grilling season. And for those of you on the East Coast, it's going to be nice this weekend, people. Get out in the yard.
It's going to be a very nice weekend.
Get that swept up.
Recover from this hectic week. Go out in the park, hike around, go swimming, and enjoy yourself.
Get in the garden, get your hands dirty.
Should we talk about the big announcement, which is already on the website?
Oh, yes. We have a big announcement. We almost forgot to announce our big announcement.
Oh my
it wasn't that we forgot. It was that we were wondering where the appropriate place was to place our big announcement. I was actually going to allude to it when I was talking about Tolkien and Children of Hurrying, and as you're getting together with your friends to do some reading this summer. I know some school districts have required reading, but others don't, and that means you're free to pick all your favorite stuff.
Yes, exactly, and we've been talking about in the past couple weeks how huge this summer is going to be. How huge this summer is going to be for movies, for books, for all kinds of really cool events. And we thought we just couldn't pass up that opportunity. We thought that this is huge. This is going to be an incredible summer, being called the Summer to Remember. And we have one big announcement.
Yes, we do.
Yes, for that of one particular aspect of this summer to remember. We have teamed up with Borders, a local Borders here in Pittsburgh, to hold our very first live podcast.
Woo!
For the release of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
Of course.
Yes. Of course.
It's going to be a big party. It's going to be
a huge party.
At the East Side Borders.
The East Side Borders in East Liberty. Details are on the website. We're going to be there at their midnight party. All Borders are having midnight parties, and we thought, hey, this is the last book. This has done so much for literature, not just children's literature, and this is the last time we'll be able to do this. So we want to be there to record the entire experience and the countdown, and we'll be there for the whole thing.
That's right.
There's going to be a whole bunch of activities, so if you're in the Pittsburgh area, please stop by and join in the fun, because we'll be there, and even if you can't come, you'll still be able to download the podcast that we end up recording, just like every other episode. So it should be really fun.
It's going to be a blast. We're going to be on site. There's going to be games. There's going to be face painting. There's going to be contests where you could win really great prizes, which I'm not at liberty to discuss yet. But in the next few weeks we will. And there's going to be an essay contest, which I'm not at liberty to discuss yet. But it's coming. And it's just going to be a blast. It's going to be so much fun. And if you're, 3rd grade, you're going to be able to participate. If you're in 12th grade, you're going to be able to participate and win some very, very cool stuff. And we are also working on some other things with the Carnegie Library, but it's top secret. So don't tell anybody. Okay? I'm trusting you to not divulge this until the appropriate hour. It's just for Falcon and Dove people.
So we won't. Yeah.
Right.
So we won't. This party is the night of July 20th, and the book will be released at midnight, July 21st, 2007. And we might even take some of the activities outside as long as it doesn't rain.
Friday night. Hey, we've got that overhang. Where the garage is.
Yes.
We're going to be outside.
Our garage.
And having fun.
Yes. This Borders parking lot is underneath a roof. So, hey.
We're going to have bands. Whole Foods is down
there. We're trying to get some celebrities, too.
Yes, we are, but we can't talk about them yet.
No.
But we're in negotiation.
We're not mentioning any names.
We're in negotiation.
We're in negotiation. So I think that's all we can talk about right now. But we were bursting to tell everybody that we were doing this, and we'll have many updates coming up, and maybe even more announcements about the development of our podcast. This is just one thing, so keep checking back, and we might have more announcements later on.
We will definitely have more. It's just going to grow.
It's going to grow.
Expand.
We are taking the world by storm, people.
There you go. And we
heard it first. You heard it
all
first.
to have as much fun with us as we possibly can. And if you can't be in Pittsburgh, there are going to be so many other places doing things.
Yes, we want to meet our listeners.
To go out there and tell them, we want a party. And let them know that you want a midnight party in your town, too. At your Borders Books. And they should be providing it for you, because we are going to have a great time.
A total blast.
Total blast. So,
we
are
rock.
so excited. We're so
You heard it first on the Falcon and the Dove.
And we will keep you abreast of any specials, any discounts, any goodies. Like I said, it's all under wraps. We're working on it. So, everybody try to have a good week. It's got to be better than this week, right?
It's all going to get better.
It's going to get better. It really is.
Hang in there. We're
really.
Moving forward. Moving forward with our friends.
With our friends. And we want you to be safe. Our prayers are with you. And we want to make sure that you know that no matter where you are in the world, you are cared about. Don't ever think you are alone, because you aren't. You are never truly alone. You always have friends, family support, or us. So,
we love you all.
We love you all. So, as Ramon says, I love you all.
I love you all. From Happy Feet.
From Happy Feet. Ramon, I hear someone wanting something.
Me!
Ramon is crazy. Robin Williams does the voice of Ramon, in case you're wondering.
This random moment.
Half of the characters, yes. Yes, but it's important to say that we care. We do care. We do care.
We love you.
And we mean that.
We love you, and we want to meet you. So please, stop by the Borders if you
Stop
can.
by the Borders.
You've got about 3 months to prepare. So.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I'm the Falcon.
And I am the Dove.
We will be talking to you next week. Be safe. Be blessed. Peace out.